Hello, I'm Edward October. Over the years, I've narrated more ghost stories, horror shows, and creepypastas than I can count. And yet, the crimes discussed on our true crime podcast managed to scare the shit out of me. This program is not suitable for children or the faint of heart. If you are such a person, go ahead and switch off this podcast. Listen to something else. Are you still with us? Well, we've warned you.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kim. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm all right. Kids are starting school this week. It's going to be great. Not for you, but for me, it's going to be great.
Super hot.
No, it is. It is.
Here in much of the U.S., I believe. So anyway, enough about that. I hear you have a case for us.
I do. In this case, some people might know it. I think it's fairly well known. It's one of those cases that always kind of stuck with me for some reason. You know how you just have those cases that you can't forget?
Can't shake them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yep.
On a beautiful July morning under partly cloudy skies in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, a truck driver made his usual delivery to the Kinross Correctional Facility, a minimum to medium security prison in Kinchelo. Michigan's Upper Peninsula is an outdoor paradise in the summer, with lots of thick forested areas filled with red maples, birch, and pine trees, and boasting over 1,700 miles of Great Lake shorelines and 300 waterfalls. It truly is a gorgeous, peaceful part of the northern United States. However, most of those 1,800 inmates at the Kinross Correctional Facility would never have access to all that beauty. They stared at concrete walls all day. But 3 of those inmates decided that they would remedy that situation and ambushed the tractor-trailer's driver around 9 in the morning on July 15th, 2010. Throwing the guard to the ground, the 3 men then jumped into the cab of the truck and plowed through the double chain-linked fence that was topped with razor wire. They were on their way to freedom. The truck only made it about 100 yards before becoming hopelessly entangled in the facility's chain-link fence. When the guards realized what was happening, they immediately took maneuvers to stop the escape. The alarm was raised, and the sirens blared and echoed throughout the surrounding trees. 2 prisoners surrendered, but 1 didn't. 1 kept going, running as fast as he could. And then a shot was fired, and the runner collapsed to the ground with a bullet in his head. Many people would feel as though the dead man's fate was the universe's way of making things right. And some would wonder how everything could have gone so wrong in the first place. 12 years earlier, on November 29th, 1998, the Privacky family of Muskegon, Michigan, decided to have a late Thanksgiving celebration the Sunday after the holiday. The family consisted of Stephen Privacky, aged 50, and he was a 5th grade science teacher at the Reiths Puffer Intermediate School in Muskegon for about 25 years. His wife, Linda, aged 49, but she was a receptionist at a doctor's office, and their 2 sons, Jedidiah, who went by Jed. He was 19 and a freshman at Muskegon Community College, and he wanted to be a school teacher just like his dad. And then their youngest son, Seth, aged 18, was a senior at Reiths Puffer High School. In many ways, the family was average. They lived in western Michigan in rural Dalton township just north of Muskegon. It's a place where amazing sunsets can be witnessed on Lake Michigan and dazzling northern lights can be seen in the winter. Now, the youngest son, Seth, was described as quiet and nice in school and maintained to be average. At age 14, Seth began experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and by the time he was 16, he'd taken speed and LSD on numerous occasions. Seth and his brother Jed were employed at Dalton grocery store, but fellow employees and management said the 2 boys could not have been more different. Jed did his job well, while Seth would sit in the back room and read comic books. One of the managers said that Seth's father, Steve, would often come in and reprimand Seth for his shortcomings. In 1995, when Seth was caught stealing beer and selling it to minors, the store fired him. Seth was arrested for shoplifting, once at his work and a second time for stealing a CD at an undisclosed location. and the judge sentenced him to 10 days in a county youth home. And as part of his sentencing, he was required to get counseling. Seth was prescribed the antidepressant Wellbutrin. Now, Wellbutrin can have many side effects, and some are, anxiety. I don't guess, but I know. Some are anxiety, insomnia, and neuropsychiatric adverse events, meaning in some kids it can cause suicidal tendencies. You knew that, right?
I did. Yeah. Especially teenagers.
Yes.
Which is so, I guess, really just shows you that they're not done, like, developing and things yet.
Their brains, well, it said they're 25 before your brain stops growing.
Mm-hmm.
In an essay that Seth was required to write as part of his court sentencing, he talked about his interest in science and how he wanted to get married and travel. Quote, "I would also like to have kids one day. Not too many, because I know how much trouble I get into and how much of a nuisance I can be sometimes." And then in another court-ordered essay, Seth wrote that his goal was, quote, "to try to become a positive role model in our society, to try to convince my peers to obey the law." And we're talking about him, so you know it might not have happened, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
In the months leading up to Thanksgiving of 1998, Seth had many fights and disagreements with his father. Steve Privacky had taken Seth's car away from him because he had gotten a C on a report card. Acquaintance of the family shared with journalists that Steve had said that he had feared Seth was without a conscience and he thought only of himself. Linda, his mother, was quoted as saying to a friend that Seth was, quote, "out of control and heading for big trouble." Whether Seth's lack of conscience was true or if his illegal and prescription drug use had somehow exacerbated his condition, it's not known. But tensions were running high in the house, and Seth felt like everybody, including his mother, was ganging up on him. Quote, "She always took Dad's side," Seth said. Around noon on November 29th, the already tense family relationships were strained to the breaking point when Seth and his father had yet another fight. Only this time, his father told Seth that he didn't love him and that he wanted him to move out of the house. This enraged Seth, who claimed that his father never had anything positive to say to him. Seth left the house at around 12:45 to pick up his father, John Privacky, and bring him back to their house for dinner. And this is the time that Linda decided to head into the bathroom and take a quick shower. Older brother Jed made himself comfortable on the couch in front of the TV. Seth went upstairs to his parents' bedroom and took a gun out of his father's closet. And while the aromas of Thanksgiving dinner filled the house, Seth loaded his dad's .22 caliber Ruger. Seth made his way down the stairs to the living room, walked up behind his brother, and shot him in the head while he watched TV. Then he dragged Jed's body to the basement so nobody would see it. At about 1:10 in the afternoon, Steve Privacky returned home with Seth's 78-year-old grandfather. Seth later claimed that he didn't know his grandfather was coming to dinner. He had thought his father had just left the house out of anger and frustration, not because he was picking up his grandfather. But once John Privacky was at the residence, Seth was forced to shoot him. Seth shot Steve and John as they were still in the garage, heading towards the door. Seth managed to shoot his father in the back of the head, but his aim was slightly off when it came to his grandfather. Seth ended up shooting him in the neck, which required him to shoot his grandfather a second time. John died in the driveway. Seth then went upstairs and waited for his mother to get out of the shower. He entered the bathroom and shot her in the back of the head. In Seth's mind, the situation couldn't have played out more perfectly. Since his father had been out of the house, he couldn't have interfered with Jed's murder. And since Jed was already dead, he couldn't interfere with the murders of his father and grandfather. And of course, his mother had been in the shower, therefore she hadn't heard the shots that killed her oldest son, her husband, and her father-in-law. It had all gone off without a hitch. Now they were all dead. But there was just one problem. Jed's girlfriend of 2 years, 19-year-old April Boss, was also a freshman at Muskegon Community College, pulled into the Privacky driveway around 1:20 p.m. Unbeknownst to Seth, April had been invited to celebrate the holiday with Jed and his family. Unfortunately, this, of course, meant that Seth had to kill her too. According to Seth, April had seen the bodies of Stephen and John Privacky, and she just thought it was a joke at first. As April walked into the family's kitchen, Seth stepped behind her, raised the gun he had hidden behind his back, and shot her. He shot everyone in the back of the head. I mean, the father was shot twice, but yeah.
Because he doesn't want to look at him.
Not sure what to do next. At about 2:30 p.m., Seth called his best friend Steve Wallace and told him over the phone that he'd, quote, made a big mistake. And he begged him to come over to help him. Steve Wallace, also a high school senior, had no criminal background at the time, and according to his parents, was a normal, average kid. A half hour later, Steve Wallace pulled into the driveway of the Privacky home. Seth was standing in the driveway smoking a cigarette and crying. Now, Wallace didn't find this unusual because he often witnessed Seth crying after he and his father had an argument. Seth sent Wallace on a mission to buy trash bags, which he did, and when he returned with the trash bags, Wallace entered the house and immediately tripped over a body. Wallace would later say that he was terrified that Seth was going to kill him too. That's
what I was waiting for. Mm-hmm. That's why I was like, oh no. Okay.
Yeah. After all, he had killed 2 other unsuspected visitors to the house. Why not him? And at one point, Wallace was so overcome by the scene of the crime that he briefly passed out. And according to Seth and Steve Wallace's testimony, Seth begged Wallace for help in disposing of the bodies. Eventually, Seth and Wallace wrapped the bodies in sheets, and they thought they would try to bury them in the woods behind the house. And even though Seth was 6'4", the bodies proved to be too heavy to move. So once the bodies of April, Seth's grandfather, and father were wrapped in sheets, Seth and Wallace managed to drag them to the workshop located just off the garage. At this point, Wallace told Seth that he needed to go back home because he hadn't told his parents where he was going, and he had a youth church bonfire to attend to. Wallace took the gun and clip with him and tossed them into a pond on his way home. Then he went to Blockbuster Video to return a movie, and then he went to the bonfire. Later that evening, Wallace and some of his other friends had found the time to take a baseball bat and vandalize mailboxes in a car in the community. While Wallace was destroying property and attending the church bonfire, Seth tried to clean up the blood throughout the house. Seth picked up Wallace from his home at around 11 p.m., and the two headed back to the Privacky house to try to dispose of the bodies. Once again, the bodies proved challenging to move, so they decided to stage a robbery instead. They removed the sheets from the bodies and dragged them to different locations within the house. They had begun loading the trunk of the car with the usual things that were stolen during a robbery, like TV, stereo, and a VCR, when they noticed car headlights turning into the driveway. Now, a bit earlier, at April Boss's house, her mother, Julie Cooper, and her husband, which was April's stepfather, received a phone call from April's place of employment saying that April had failed to show up for her shift at work that evening. Now, Julie was immediately worried because that wasn't in April's nature. I mean, she didn't do that kind of stuff. She was a really good kid. The couple drove over to the Privackys' home, and to their horror, the Coopers found a tall, thin man standing over a bloody body in the driveway. The man immediately bolted to the back of the house and out the back door. Terrified, Julie Cooper bravely went inside the house and used a portable, or a cordless phone, to call 911. In a trembling voice, she described the scene to the police, telling them, quote, "I'm really worried. I don't know where my daughter is. Her car and their cars are here," meaning the Privackys, "but none of them are here," meaning she couldn't see any of the bodies. I think what it is she just walked in quickly, grabbed the phone, and walked out. You know what I mean? I don't think she searched the premises. When the police arrived, they found the house littered with bodies, blood, and brain matter. County Prosecutor Tony Tagg described the scene as, quote, "the most serious and vicious attack on a household in my 15 years. Tagg would go on to say that it appeared that they were all killed in a quick spree and execution style. Seth's friend, Steve Wallace, was found hiding in the woods just an hour after April's parents discovered the crime scene. He was arrested and taken into custody. In Seth Privacky's statement to the police, he described the scene that followed. Quote, "We noticed a car pull up, so I quickly ran out and shut the trunk and ran back inside. And we went out the slider door. And we were looking out through the back garage door just to see who it was. And I thought it was a cop, so we both ran. We ran across the empty parking lot next door, and we waited for a couple of minutes. And then I decided to go back and check to make sure it was a cop." He then went on to say that eventually he saw a vehicle speeding up the road with sirens on. Quote, "I could see cop cars going up and down the road, and then I made my way across the creek. I was going to circle around the house to see what was going on from the other neighbor's yard, and then I heard dogs, and I knew they were search dogs, and they were going to start searching for us, so I ran. After a lot of crisscrossing back and forth across different rural roads and a golf course, Seth felt secure that he was no longer being followed and, quote, just laid down and tried to sleep under a pine tree. Seth continued his statement with, quote, and then I woke up the next morning and I stayed there for a few hours and I thought that they weren't pursuing me anymore. So I was going to make my way back to Jason Pitt's house where I planned to commit suicide, but no one was home. So I went into the back pole barn and waited for them to come home, and the police found me and arrested me. Except that wasn't entirely true. On the afternoon of Monday, November 30th, 1998, Jana Simonelli was driving through the pouring rain when she came upon a hitchhiker just a few miles from the Privacky house. And through the grapevine and the news, Jana had heard that her friend Seth was the prime suspect in his family's murder. And like most people, Jana just couldn't believe what people were saying. I mean, she'd known Seth since kindergarten. I mean, how could that possibly be true?
There were signs, though.
Mm-hmm. The rain was really coming down, and it was only a few degrees above freezing, and Jana felt sorry for this hitchhiker. As the hitchhiker reached for the door on the passenger side, Jana realized that it was Seth. And, quote, it was too late to pull away, she said. So she let Seth in the car. Mm-hmm. And Seth behaved as if nothing had happened and instructed her to take him to Jason's house on Duck Lane Road. Jana also behaved as if nothing had happened. She pretended that she hadn't heard that the boy she had known since kindergarten, who was now sitting in the passenger seat of her car, had just slaughtered 5 people, 4 of them his own family members. Her inside was shaking and she was terrified. Mercifully, the drive was just a few miles. After she dropped Seth off, she sped to the nearest house and called 911 to let the police know that Seth Privacky was in a pole barn on Duck Lake Road. Police arrived and arrested Seth. He gave up without a fight and simply asked for a lawyer. On December 1st, Stephen Wallace and Seth Privacky were charged with murder. However, Wallace's charges eventually were reduced to an accessory after the fact and the use of a firearm in a felony. In May of 1999, a month that should have been full of Seth's high school graduation celebrations with friends and family, Seth pleaded no contest to his charges and was given 5 life sentences. He stood in a courtroom and said, quote, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm here to accept punishment I almost certainly deserve. Stephen Wallace was acquitted of his charges in November of 1999. It took a jury less than 5 hours to find him not guilty. The jury's decision stunned the prosecution, friends, and family of April Boss and the Privackys, but supporters of Wallace argued that he was not only afraid for his own life, but also in shock after seeing the carnage of the Privacky home. Wallace and his attorneys never denied that he was there or helped move the bodies around, but had acted only out of fear. The jury felt that the prosecution did not prove that Wallace had criminal intent when helping his friend. Wallace's lawyer said, in some ways, Wallace was also one of Seth's victims, and indeed, Wallace would struggle in the coming years to get his life back on track. A few weeks after Wallace's acquittal, he pleaded no contest to misdemeanor property destruction. A judge ordered Wallace to pay restitutions, fines, and costs for damaging a mailbox and a car during a vandalism spree done during the break between his 2 visits to the Privacky crime scene. Steve Wallace would later be convicted 3 times of misdemeanor domestic violence in 2003, 2005, and 2006. He was made to pay a fine in his first 2 cases. The 3rd one, he was sentenced to jail, eventually to 90 days after he violated probation. And then he was placed on probation again for 18 months. In 2005, he pleaded guilty to attempted resisting and obstructing police. Again, he was sentenced to a brief jail term and a year's probation. He was then ordered to participate in outpatient substance abuse treatment. Wallace would go on to receive and conceal stolen property and was sentenced to yet again more prison time in 2007. At some point, Wallace appeared to have his life back on track. He was continuing to play music and eventually even had a few children. Sadly, Stephen Wallace suddenly passed away in 2021 at the age of 40. Unfortunately, even with Seth Privacky behind bars upstate, it did little to answer the main question everybody asked. Why? Why did he do this? Did Seth kill his whole family simply because his father told him he had to move out?
No.
Experts on parricide state that young adults who kill their parents or their entire family really aren't concerned with getting caught. They're only concerned with getting even. And this would make sense to some degree, as Seth didn't seem to know what to do once the job of killing his whole family was done. Seth was caught on security footage at Meijer's, which is a local chain store, kind of like Walmart, but I think it's better. That's just my opinion. But anyway, he was caught on security footage trying to buy ammunition on Saturday night, the night before the murders. He was turned down because he wasn't of legal age to buy ammunition, which is 21 in the state of Michigan. Security footage shows him coming back just a few hours later, where the same clerk was still on duty, and that same clerk turned him down once again. And to this day, nobody knows where Seth got the ammunition. During the investigation, he denied buying the ammo, and he denied that he was even given the ammo.
Yeah, he stole it. I'm thinking he stole it.
I'm thinking that his dad had to have had it somewhere. I mean, you don't really own guns without having ammo, right? I don't know. I mean, I guess Dad could be out of ammo. I don't know. Anyway, we have no clue. No idea. This footage clearly shows premeditation on Seth's part. He didn't have an escape plan. He didn't have a plan to dispose of the body or even a plan to keep blood from splattering all over the house. I mean, it was just like he wasn't worried about getting caught, which leads credence to a statement on suicidal thoughts. Or he didn't have the mental capacity to think that far ahead, which, you know, he's young.
I think at that point, it didn't matter to him if he went to prison. He just wanted his family gone.
Right. I think that just wanting his family gone was like the only thing he thought of.
That's it.
And then that was it. He didn't think past that. It also brings into question on what day the argument over his impending eviction happened. I mean, was it Sunday, the day their Thanksgiving celebration happened, or the night before, which seems more likely since he ended up going to the store on Saturday night to attempt to buy the ammunition rather than, that Sunday. Seth claimed in later interviews that he had been on an LSD trip during the crimes, and he began crying and throwing up when he came off the drug and he realized that he killed his entire family. And as far as it can be determined from mining the internet for any information whatsoever, Seth was never given a drug test when he was arrested. So nobody is certain if he was on LSD when it happened, or if he was taking Wellbutrin at the time, or if he was combining the two drugs. We don't know. Police say that they didn't believe Seth's story about being on LSD because he didn't mention it at the time of his questioning.
I would think that when he was taken into custody that they would, maybe they don't, but especially
in 1998, maybe not.
With a severe crime like that, wouldn't you take blood just to, I don't know.
I don't know.
You would think,
I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe they don't.
Seth also stated in an interview, quote, "I feel awful. I wish I'd never done it. I'd take it back 1,000 times. When I ran, it wasn't to get away. In a way, it was so I could kill myself because I couldn't live with myself for doing this to my family." He also broke down and cried at the end of his interrogation. And we'll never know whether those were his true sentiments or if he was just stating what he thought people wanted to hear. And the same goes for the tears. Were they tears for his family or for himself?
I'm going to say himself.
Seth admitted that he had trouble dealing with the knowledge that he would never get out of prison. And at his sentencing, he made one request to Judge Michael J. Nolan. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This proves how young he is. Quote, "I would just like the chance to get out and see the world before I go away for a long time."
Oh, buddy.
That's your lucky day, Seth. We're going to give you a trip around the world right before we put you away for life. Yeah. So his request was obviously not considered, but that request also shows you the alarming level of immaturity and narcissism that Seth.
And to be put away at 18,
I know.
There's no more memories to be made.
5 life sentences, yeah.
Just, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard the story. I looked up this picture.
Really?
I don't think I have.
Seth had a very troubled life behind bars as well. He ended up being cited for misconduct within the prison system about 32 times. Some sources say 29, but we're going to go with 32. Some of them were for possession of a weapon, theft, drug use, and fighting. He openly admitted that he participated in extortion of other prisoners, the drug trade, and fighting. Seth said, quote, "In prison, it is a predator-prey environment where the strong take advantage of the weak. And like many before him, he later found God and was baptized in the cell block shower." Officer Edwards, who interrogated Seth, was quoted as saying, quote, "Everybody who goes to prison gets religion." And he's not wrong. Edwards, not surprisingly, was sticking by his opinion that Seth was a psychopath without a conscience. But few things raise the question of whether there's a bit of conscience in there somewhere. One was that he went out of his way in his confession to make sure that the police understood that his friend Steve Wallace was not involved in the crimes themselves, and that Steve needed to be convinced to help him move the bodies. The other is his omission of Jana Simonelli's giving him a ride to his friend Jason's house. He could have forgotten that Jana gave him a ride when he made a statement, but he also might have been trying to keep her out of trouble, because it would have been an accomplice, right? After the fact. In the end, it doesn't really matter. The damage was done, and there is no going back. In the summer of 2010, Seth and 2 other inmates, Brian Davidson, 31, who was convicted of beating a man to death, and Andrew Ross, 25, who eerily was in jail for killing his parents, an older brother, just like Seth, were the ones that decided to make the break for it from the correctional facility. The inmates were stopped, and many were quick to point out that the system worked, but it was the idea of having mass murderers in a minimum to medium security prison in the first place that upset the residents and brought it all into question. You know, the Michigan Department of Corrections really came under fire because these men should have been in a higher security prison.
I totally forgot about that till you just said that. Yeah, why were they in there?
I don't know, but people were not happy. And I mean, Both Brian Davidson and Andrew Ross surrendered on that day in July of 2010. Both were moved into segregation units in a higher security prison and faced charges. But Seth Privacky, he was the one that kept running. He ran until he was brought down with a bullet to the back of his head, just like the rest of his family.
Well, see, I think he did that on purpose.
Goes around, comes around.
That was like suicide by, he didn't.
Yeah, by guard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he didn't want to.
Well, like you said, he's 18 and he's facing life in prison. Not life, like 5 life's terms. He was never going to get out of prison, ever. Nope. So why go back?
For the most part, I think when prisoners break out of prison, that they know that. They have to know that most likely it's not going to end well. They're either going to, they have to know that they might die, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
In case people are wondering why there was no shots heard. I mean, they lived in the middle of nowhere pretty much. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was very rural, and it was around hunting season, I would assume.
Oh, mm-hmm.
I mean, it's around hunting season here. And plus, guns go off all the time.
Yeah.
You don't pay any attention to them. The house is no longer there. I think it was razed to the ground. There was an article that stated that the Privackys, had recently sold the house and they were preparing to move. A family slaughtered in the home. It might probably not be a good selling point, right?
No,
so the house, I think, was torn down. It was torn down. And there can't really see if there's anything there now. I know that there is an amusement park about 10, 15 miles away. Mm-hmm. And in a comment I read somewhere, somebody said that they made where the house was into a camping ground. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to. I don't want to camp in the first place, but I really wouldn't want to camp there. But I'm not for sure.
Interesting.
But, yeah.
Well, they probably. I don't know.
Yep.
Wow, Jen. Like I said, and I've heard about everything. I'm gonna have to go look into this a little bit more because I don't know.
I mean, was it the Wellbutrin? Because that's supposed to.
That's what they say. You know what though? I'm thinking like head injury or something because there was some signs that he struggled earlier too.
Right.
As a kid.
And I mean, when it said, the father said that he wasn't loved, or I'm sure that had to come from Seth. It was after the fact.
You never know, though.
It breaks my heart to think the parent would ever tell a child that.
But it happens. I'm not saying they did, but, it happens more than we would like to know, I'm sure.
I'm surprised you haven't heard this case at all. It's usually told around Thanksgiving because that's when it happened. But it's always bothered me about how a child, I mean, he was a smart kid.
Young.
I mean, made better grades than we did in high school. How he just kind of snapped and why he snapped and what. I mean, even his parents said at one point that he was a good kid, right? Or at least outwardly they said that to other people.
Yeah. Well, and it's your kid. So you don't see, I don't think you tend to see all that necessarily. You think they're struggling now and you can't wait for them to grow up and grow out of the stage.
Right.
But
I mean, his mom said that he was heading into trouble. I don't know. But
you sure don't think they're going to come home. Your baby that you gave birth to is going to come home and slaughter the entire family.
Or you're going to step out of the shower and they're going to put a bullet in the back. Mm-mm. No, not at all.
That's awful.
And I mean, can't. No, it's just.
And I guess his friend Wallace kid was his first name?
Stephen, the dad. That's why I always called him. I usually like to use first names, but since his dad was named Steve, Seth's dad's Steve,
well, I would think, too, they said he was kind of a victim. But I think that if I were him, I would be, I'll help you do whatever you want.
Oh,
because, you know what I mean? Like, I saw what you did to the people that you were upset with.
That you love. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That you were related to. You brutally.
And what can he, hey, okay, I just, my mom's making a tuna sandwich. Let me just run home and get that real quick and I'll come back. No, you're kind of stuck there.
Right.
Because if you said that,
Right. And it's not like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. And the poor guy had such a hard life after. So, that affected.
Struggling. Well, how could you not?
Right.
Oh, my gosh. And at that age? Mm-hmm. And then he died so young.
Yeah. At 40.
Ooh, that's young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that was interesting,
the whole thing
Jen.
is tragic. It's tragic on all counts.
And then I'm thinking, if I was the neighbors that lived by the prison, and these are mass murderers, why are they being housed there? Because
minimum to medium security. Yeah, I have no idea why they were. They were just that's why they were pissed off. That's why the Michigan Correctional Department got
big trouble,
a lot of heat. Yeah,
as they
why
should.
The hell were these criminal? Not petty crime. I mean, these guys just weren't in. They were in for killing, murder. The one kid was just like Seth and killed his entire family.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting, Jen. I liked it.
There's just something about it with this kid who seemed normal, that had normal kid problems, just suddenly snapped. And
I don't know if they have issues, too, with not realizing, littles don't realize consequence or that death is final. And maybe like that, he didn't, I don't know.
18, you would think that you would know death was final. Unless just the rage overcame him.
Yeah.
I guess
just
that's where it always sticks in my head. Every Thanksgiving, I'm it always creeps in my head.
Ew.
Or holidays. You know what I mean? That it's just...
Yeah. Now it's going to creep in my head. Thank you very much.
I know, the stress of the holidays and all that kind of stuff. I just... be nice to your kids.
He obviously had some issues. You know what I mean? He obviously had issues.
Yeah, more than they knew.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, obviously he had depression because he was put on Wellbutrin, but murder goes much deeper than depression.
That's homicidal, not suicidal.
Yep. So anyway, right after you hear this, Camille and I are going to be in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas?
At the True Crime Podcast Festival.
True Crime Podcast and Paranormal.
Sorry, they just changed it for this year. So if you're in the Austin area,
come see us.
Send us a DM, either through Twitter or you could go to our True Crime Podcast at gmail.com and send us a little email. And we'd love to see you.
That would be so fun.
That would be a blast. Just shoot us an email and come see us. I mean,
get some swag.
Yeah.
Some good stuff.
Some stickers and stuff. I mean, you can buy tickets or, there's always the hotel bar, I believe, that we can meet up for a drink. So if you're interested.
Heck yeah. I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there Thursday or the day after this release. So
Thursday.
Let us know and we'll see what we can do.
That would be super fun.
It would be fun.
Can we say that a couple more times? It would be.
It'd be so much fun.
It'd be so much fun.
Oh my God. So much fun. But other than that, have you been watching anything?
Well, like I said last week, when I watched everything on TV, I know it's time to go back to school.
Yep.
I finished Big Love, which I talked about last week. Not happy with how it ended.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. And it was getting a little kind of jumped the shark, but that's whatever. Then I kind of started rewatching, and I think you did too, True Blood.
Oh, I did. I finished True Blood. Mm-hmm. That jumped the shark at
again.
The end.
You mean, yeah. Oh, there is, on Max, there is it's a series, and I started it, Telemarketers.
I heard that's really good. Javier from Pretend and Criminal Intent.
Conduct.
Yep. Criminal Conduct.
Yeah.
Said he just started it, and he said it was really good.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know what I think yet.
Yeah,
I'll
have to watch it.
Y'all watch it. Let me know.
Well, I got sucked into Bama Rush TikToks.
Yes, you did.
It was very eye-opening. I totally
Jen
missed it
would
last
send
year.
me updates. Well, see, last year I was kind of on it, and then I watched the Bama documentary that came out, which was, I'm not even sure what I think about that. And then this year, Jen kept sending me updates, and then she kind of got me involved. So I would get up in the morning and say, "Hey, Jen, what happened to your girls?"
What's the girls? Because I had two girls that I was looking that I really liked, and I think everybody liked them. One was Bama Morgan on TikTok, and the other one was Bella Grace. As of today, which is the Sunday, Morgan didn't get into a sorority, and I haven't yet seen if Bella Grace did or not. I'm pretty sure Bella Grace did, but I was totally brokenhearted.
Yeah.
That Morgan basically is me. I felt really, to be honest, she's excited in her heart. I don't think she openly showed excitement. Like I usually don't show excitement. I'm like not one of those girls that jump and scream and clap and all that kind of stuff. I'm very inside person.
You're like, I am laughing.
I am laughing
really hard.
I think it's really, I just don't show emotion very easily. But yeah, I was crushed. I think it's better for her anyway because
she'll be fine.
I really think the sororities are toxic.
Well, she'll be fine.
I know she'll be great.
She's got following.
She's got all sorts of brand deals now. People are, willing to ride at dawn for her. So
right, and I wonder if some of the people did that on purpose because you're not supposed to go on social media. That's part of the rules.
But a lot of girls did.
Well, I know.
That's the same. In the years past, I don't know. I don't know why she wasn't taken. It could have been numerous reasons. I mean, her grades might not have been good.
Never know.
And you know what? It saves her parents thousands of dollars.
See,
it's almost $10,000 for a year in a sorority, and that's on top of everything else.
Yeah.
That's not even living in a sorority house. So unbelievable. I wish I had sorority money. Yes, I got sucked into Bama Rush, so that's what I was doing most of the week. So. Just unreal. It's a totally different life.
Times have changed,
than I would ever consider. Just
Times
unreal.
Have changed. Just the money that they spend on their outfits and jewelry.
There were some that were upwards of $10,000 to $14,000 on just clothes for one night, one day. No.
That's crazy. That is insane.
I know. I took my youngest daughter shopping, and I'm like, they want $40 for leggings? I was like floored. So, yeah, there's no way.
You got to get out more, Jen. That's
I know. But it was, I know. You know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying.
I'm like, can't you just get the $15 pair off Amazon? I mean, I know they're see-through, but can't you just work with it? Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
I do. I do know what you're saying.
So. But anyway, it was totally eye-opening. And I'm going to try to talk my kids into not rushing sororities when they go. I'm sure the oldest one won't, but the youngest one may.
Oh, I think the youngest one definitely will.
She's got that personality too.
She does. And that's okay.
No, it's great.
They're not all bad.
Start saving their money.
People that go to those big colleges like that. I mean, you're networking, so then you have all those people to help you get a job.
You learn not only that, but you learn leadership skills. You learn you
also learn how to
get along with everybody.
A lot.
Oh, no, well, most people know how to do that by the time they go to college. We did.
Yeah, in a sorority though, it's you have parties all the time. But so you do learn organizational skills because you have to decide: am I going to go get drunk at the Pike House tonight, or am I going to study for my calculus test? Mm-hmm. And we all know which one Camille would have chosen. Well, Camille did choose. So,
Camille was never in calculus.
Made it to calculus. That's true. I don't even know what calculus is, but
General Math 15 was.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, and I use it too. I use it a lot more than I use calculus. I'll tell you that.
But anyway, it's just very interesting. I was floored and enthralled.
Did you watch the documentary, right?
I did watch the documentary.
What'd you think?
The filmmaker was very odd. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt she may have had a cross to bear a little bit. But yeah.
That's all. You don't need to say
it was
anymore.
dark. It was. I mean, it was. The sororities are toxic. The ones that they were talking about were pretty toxic. So
Yeah. Not always, but
not all of just the ones in the documentary seem to be very toxic, in my opinion. Not all sororities are, but I think, let's just put it that. Let's do this. How's this? The documentary, the documentary made it seem like the sororities were toxic, and we all know that documentaries always have an angle where they go to. That they're usually, they're going to show what they want you to see and not the other side of the story.
Yes.
So there you go. That's my statement on it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your professional statement. And your press secretary will be putting that out.
Yeah.
In print. You're welcome.
But other than that, that's it. I haven't been doing anything. School starts Tuesday for us, like I said earlier.
Yep.
And I'm thrilled.
Yeah, me too.
I know you are.
I tell you. Thrilled. School starts Wednesday. And then I leave Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So, So the first 2 real days of school, I won't be there, which is weird, but that's okay.
That's all right. The kids won't miss you.
Yeah, they won't because they won't know me. Yeah. I don't know them yet.
So anyway.
On Wednesday, we sit in the study hall all darn day.
Oh.
So you don't really,
Yeah, it's a wasted day. But anyway. All right.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I got. Yep.
Okay. Remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya. For more information about this episode, as well as all other sources, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by the hosts, Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertese from We Talk of Dreams. You can reach Nico at wetalkofdreams.com. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from OctoberPod VHS. You can find all of his great works on YouTube. Please make sure to like and subscribe to our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter with the handle at Our True Crime Pod. You can also email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. We would also at this time like to thank our patrons. We would be so lost without you. Thank you so much. And if you would like to help support the show, you can check us out on patreon.com/Our True Crime Podcast. You can also show your support by leaving a 5-star review on Apple or simply just tell your friends about us. It's that easy. Love ya. And neuropsychiatric adverse events, meaning in some kids it can cause suicidal tendencies. You knew that, right?
I did. Yeah. Especially teenagers.
Yes.
Which is so, I guess, really just shows you that they're not done, like, developing and things yet.
Their brains, well, it said they're 25 before your brain stops growing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still waiting for mine to stop growing.
I'm waiting for yours to start.
I know. Thank you. Ba-dum. All right. Anyway.